Greetings, and welcome to the first official episode of Weaving Sacred Stories. I am your host, Shahaley, aka Woman of the Water, and I am eternally grateful for this opportunity to share space, and more specifically, in this episode, share my sacred story. There are many more stories to come, so buckle up and enjoy the ride. I feel like I have officially landed. Like, the rocket ship has finally made it to the planet that I was trying to go to. I feel like I've been on this cosmic journey, and it has a lot of different turns and twists, and I'm riding the Milky Way in like a Mario Kart car, and like sometimes someone throws a banana peel and then I get off track, and it's like, okay, stay on course. Thank you so much for being here, whoever decides to take a leap of faith and listen to me talk for God knows how long. I'll try to make it short, you guys, but at the same time, I've always personally enjoyed long form podcasts, and so yeah, I'm okay if it ends up being a long form podcast. The editing process, I can tell, is going to be a pain, and if you know me, you know that I don't like editing. I talk about it often, that it's the bane of my existence. And actually, let's just sit with that for a second to get started, because the truth is that I don't want to edit myself. Yes. And I think that one of my gifts is the in the moment mess of it all. It is more often than not in society and culture, in life, that we are expected to show up, put together, and to have it all figured out. And I think for me, one of the things that I really adore and treasure and value about myself is I'm willing to do it raw, and when the lighting's not great, and when I don't feel like getting ready to post a reel, and when I'm tired, and when I have allergies, and when my life is not where I want it to be, and I think that this idea of like wanting it to even be somewhere, it's like, I don't even know if I want it to be anywhere. I think I'm just here, baby. And we're riding the wave, and I'm so in flow, and I'm so in presence. And this is the most present I have ever been in my entire life. And we'll get into that, because I have not always been water woman. I have not always been a priestess. I mean, in the ways of the world, I have not always been this embodied. I was actually very disassociated in my youth, and I'll go into that. And I would like to just stick to this part of my story that I really think would benefit those listening, because I know that there are other people out there who have gone through either similar things, or they know someone who has gone through similar things, and I want to shed light and illuminate some of the shadows of spirituality and awakening and gifts and abilities, and the realms that don't get brought up in everyday conversation. No, they don't. and feminine magic and masculine magic and the magic of God and goddess and love. And my story is also just a story of, a woman awakening to herself in a world that did not tell the story of her and did not tell the story of the goddess, but told stories of just one, and it was a he, and how reclaiming the other aspect of God completely changed my life as a woman. And so, I welcome anyone to my space. I want to be really, really clear that number one, this is a safe space. It's not a safe space in the ways of you will always feel comfortable, and it's not a safe space in a bypassy, avoid, distract with pleasure type of safe. No, this is safe as in it is safe to show up with all the parts of you, all your faces, your shadows, the things that you're ashamed of, the things that you think are unlovable. It's safe to show up and be triggered. Yeah, it's safe to be triggered in my presence. It's safe to feel uncomfortable. It's safe to really go there. And within yourself, and while you witness and receive, because that also is the masculine and feminine dance, which is witnessing, which we all witness. We are witnessing life at all times. And then there's the receiving, the receptive aspect is being witnessed, is being seen. Consciousness and life constantly dancing with one another. And so, yes, you are safe here, and all of you is safe here and welcome here. I just cannot promise that you will always feel cozy. And that some things might be triggering, or they might just stir up things within you and things to think about. And this isn't a cult. This isn't a pyramid scheme. This isn't, sign up and you get the career. Like, no, this is just, I'm just a regular woman, who just happened to go through some really crazy life experiences that catalyzed me into growth and change and evolution. And I'm actually pretty normal in a lot of ways. My life is actually pretty peaceful and normal, and not that extravagant in the day-to-day. I like to think of myself as a pretty regular human. But when you really sit back and think about the grand scheme of things, yes, my life has been pretty crazy. And I also have decided to be very interested in and devoted to some niche and sometimes taboo topics. And that's all that it really is, guys. I just am passionate about things that not a lot of people are passionate about. And when you really let what moves you and what lights you up, lead you to things to uncover more, and you end up just devoting a lot of time and energy to the things that light you up and that you're passionate about. So yes, I am going to tell my story now, and I hope that this babbling and whatever, me just yapping, I'm a yapaholic. Hello, I love to talk. And I also really love to listen. And so that's also another reason why I started this podcast, is because people are fascinating and lovely and beautiful, and they're so deep. And I love listening to people tell me about their life and their stories. And I like when they really go there and they're really real and honest and raw. And so this is also just my own little selfish way of being able to listen to people tell their stories. And I'm a very curious gal, and I love to ask questions and go deeper. So yes, stay tuned, because this first episode, yes, it's about me. But the coming episodes will be showcasing humanity in a really beautiful way, and I'm really excited. So yes, stick around, guys. And also, I don't know if I'm going to edit this. It might just be a lot of me going and so, and taking deep breaths in between me trying to spit this out. So if it's going to bother you, then maybe this space isn't for you. I'm really allowing myself to unfold and to trust the process and to understand that everything is an evolution. So you have to start somewhere. And this is me starting. And this is me betting on myself and loving myself and not being afraid to just go for it. So where do I even want to begin? From the beginning, I was born in Eugene, Oregon. And I grew up in a pretty big family. My mom was one of 5, and my grandmother, was in the church heavily. And so I had a very religious influence in a lot of ways when it comes to my mother's side of the family. Later, I would come to find out that this is where the energy of Mary Magdalene is very prevalent in my work and in my space, is from my grandma. And that line, following those threads and weaving my threads with her threads, my grandmother, has been such a blessing in my life to rediscover the roots of the goddess and Mary Magdalene. And this goes back as far as Egypt, and, the beginning of time, essentially. My parents did end up getting a divorce when I was 7, and my mom did move me and my brother out of Eugene for a while. We went to Central Oregon, Bend specifically, and we lived with my grandma for a while. My parents' relationship was really tumultuous. It was pretty violent, and it wasn't healthy. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and so we lived on base in Arizona for a while after I was born. And that was pretty traumatic because they just really were not nice to each other. They fought a lot. And when you're a little girl and you're really sensitive, and I think that this is where I really have to be gentle with myself, and where my own knowledge of kids kind of comes in, because I nannied for 3 years professionally in Portland when I was 22 to 25. I nannied professionally in Portland. And when we're dealing with kids, we're really dealing with the developmental stages of our brain for the rest of our lives. So from 0 to 5, that's when our brain development is developing connection and secure attachment styles, and our attachment styles to the world, and what safety looks like, and what love looks like, and all these things that are really going on in our brain when we're very, very young. When you don't grow up in a nourishing environment, when you don't grow up in a soft, loving way, and there's a lot of violence and anger, and you don't really ever feel quite safe, what ends up happening is that you never feel safe. And I think because my brain at that time was not being nourished, I ended up shutting down a lot of what was spiritual gifts. This ended up evolving into what I would call never fully feeling seen or known by the people around me. Like, this is like me disassociating because I never felt fully grounded in reality because I couldn't relate to anybody. And part of that was I needed to take off my masks and I needed to put down my guard and I needed to show up as myself, which is just a very emotionally intelligent and sensitive and open-hearted and very feminine energy that I have. And I needed to put all of the masks down in order to fully relate to my family, to my friends, to my people in my community so that they could actually know who I was. But that was a journey, and so we'll talk about that a little bit because my teenage years were full of just hiding. I just hid. I ran away. I didn't want to relate to anybody because I didn't feel like anybody understood me, even though I never really let people fully see me because when I was a kid, I had to hide myself in order to protect myself because of my environment. That's essentially what it all boils down to. So fast forward to my spiritual awakening. I was 18 years old and I had had my daughter. I had her when I was 17, so she was about a year old, and I had just graduated from high school. And I was spending a lot of time with one of my grandmas. And this particular grandma was very open, and I felt very safe with her. And we decided that we were going to look into psilocybin mushrooms. And this is where I was initiated into a more shamanic way of being, and I will explain. So my journey with plant medicine has been intense and life-changing from the beginning because I was initiated into the depths of my psyche at such a young age and in such a different way than, the people around me, my friends around me. A lot of them would take, psychedelics and go to parties, or a lot of people around me, 17, 18, 19, like people are experimenting around me, and that was very normal. And I was very accepting of that. I had been smoking some weed, for years at that point, and I had been drinking and experimenting with weed and alcohol at that point for a few years. But when it came to psychedelics, I did watch people take them and go to concerts or raves or go to parties. But when I took the mushrooms, that wasn't the case for me. It was very different. And at first I thought, well, maybe I just can't handle them, but that wasn't the case at all. It was that these things were sacred. The mushrooms in particular, and I will say that those are my plant medicine of choice because it's actually a plant medicine. It's something that grows out of the earth and feels very safe, and I feel very held by the mother energy when I am taking psilocybin. But I was being initiated into what I would call like my root work because I was with my grandma and we were in her garden, and for about 2 weeks we just made tea and lemon tech, and we would sit and we would go out into the garden, and we would come inside and sit on the couch, and we would talk about our experience. And it was about 2 weeks of microdosing, and at times probably not really dosing ourselves, like measuring it out, but just kind of doing it. And who knows how much, what we were doing, how much we were doing, but it was about 2 weeks of just really sitting with the mushroom with each other. And what happened in those 2 weeks was essentially me having to drop all of the masks that I had built over the last 18 years to try and, hide and stay safe. And essentially my ancestors came through and let me know that, my life, everything was not like as it seemed, and that I did have some kind of spiritual calling, and that I was meant to share my medicine, and that it was just all this very prophetic type of stuff that I look back on now, and I realized that the mushrooms were really shaping me for energetic work and to be able to handle transmutation and taking on some pretty gnarly energies when you're in a very sensitive and receptive state. And yeah, so there was an energy, there was an energy in my grandma's house that was really gnarly, and just, here's how I see the more darker, when you think of like someone who's mean-spirited or bitter, or they just are, they're all twisted up in their own misery. That energy, it's an energy. I don't use energy in a personal way. Like it to me, it's not even like I attach faces to these things anymore. It's just like, look, some people, they never face their stuff, and so their energy is just heavy and can be pretty gnarly. And if you never look in the mirror your whole life and you're late into your 60s, then yeah, you got some stuff going on. And when you're someone like me who's really receptive and really open and very feminine, and I feel things really deeply, I felt that from this person in the house. And I do believe that at such a young age, I was only 18, and I was just starting to remember my gifts and who I was. And I was just starting to tap back into my relationship to God and all these things after, having a baby really young and moving through a lot of pain over my parents' separation from childhood, and the instability that was created from that. It was just a lot. It was a lot, but the plants and my ancestors and the gods knew that I could handle it, but it really was this testament to my strength in the moment of being faced with someone who carried a lot inside of them. And, I was able to move through that, and I'm proud of myself for that. And it's really difficult when you're in a spiritual situation that seems like it's way out of your control, and all you have to lean on is like, I trust the mushroom, and like back then I didn't even think about gods and goddesses and, source, divine, divinity. Like I didn't even have this language. Back then it was just like, I trust the mushroom. Like I trust earth, because I would go out there and sit in the garden and let the plants harmonize with me in my thoughts and in my heart. So back then my 18-year-old self was just like tripping out, like, God, I'm feeling things so deeply. This is so insane. But I didn't have the language for it. So it was more of just like, I just trust that the mushrooms got my back and that I can ride this wave. But essentially, the mushrooms were teaching me to trust myself, surrender to the trip, which is essentially death and rebirth. That is what psilocybin does. If you've ever taken it, then you know what I'm talking about. You go through a death portal and then you are reborn. And that is the cycle of life. And that is the cycle of the ego and how we evolve out of different versions of ourselves is moving through the different aspects of ourselves and meeting those parts of us. And then, when we've outgrown certain things, we can put them to rest. And that is a death energy. But that is just so that we can move into the next phase of who we are now in this moment to moment. So yes, that was a lot, and that was a huge initiation into my spirituality. And so, yeah, I will kind of end my childhood and my teenage years off with that. There's so much that I could say, but I really feel like the meat of what I want to get to is on the horizon. So I want to take a deep breath with you guys in this moment if you've made it this far. And I also want to say thank you for giving me any of your time, energy to be in this space with me. And I do feel held and supported. And this is the most held and supported that I've ever felt in my entire life. And so I just want to kind of melt a little bit as I get into the next part of my story. And arriving at the most pivotal point in my life, an event happened that changed my life forever. I have not been the same person, and I think that nobody is the same after this type of thing happens to you. And this didn't just happen to me, you guys. This happened to my family. This happened to my brother. This happened to my sister, my aunts, my grandma. This happened to everybody around me. And the most spiritual thing that's ever happened to me, no amount of plant medicine, no amount of sex, no amount of drugs, no amount of music, no amount of concerts, no amount of journaling, no amount of meditation, nothing is as spiritual as meeting death. So, I graduate high school. I have these beautiful medicine journeys. And then my mom is dying. She had stage 4 cancer. And yeah, she was dying. And when I say meeting death, I mean your mom is fine. She's healthy. She's beautiful. She's radiant. She literally had just had a baby, my youngest brother. And then 1 year later, she's dead. 1 year. She's there, and then she's gone. And that, my loves, is the most potent medicine that you will ever take in your entire life. And yeah, I don't think you can be the same after that. So, I did not take my mom's death very well. No, not at all. I lost it. I lost my mind. And I started to sabotage my life in a way that I didn't even know people could do. I honestly I didn't even know it was possible to sabotage your life to that extent. But here's the thing, right? As I go into this more intense part of my journey, pain makes us angry and destructive, And when we don't feel held and we don't feel safe and we haven't related to anyone around us in a deep way, we feel really alone. And I also was mad at God because I couldn't understand why you would do this to my family. How dare you? She had just had a baby. She was finally at peace. She was finally happy. My mom went through a lot. Like I'm about to tell my story, but my mom's story is not that different. And in many ways, I see myself in her so much that it makes me so proud of who I am. I could never really, truly not love myself because I see myself in my mom, and I see myself in my daughter, and I see myself in my grandma. And so when you see yourself in the goddess, and you see yourself in the feminine, and you see yourself in the earth, you can no longer hide. You can no longer not love yourself and your sisters. And my mom holds me right now in this moment. She speaks through me. She's with me. She loves me. She always loved me. She always saw me, even when I felt alone and didn't know what I was doing. And so, yes, this is my story of how I just disintegrated into a hell realm, which is a part of the spiritual journey. It's the dark night of the soul. So would you guys like to hear about my dark night of the soul? Triggered by my mother's death. It's so dramatic, I know, but hey, life is pretty dramatic. So here we go. I dropped my daughter off at her dad's house, and I said, I don't know where I'm going to stay. But I'll come and visit her, and I'm really sorry. At that point, he was a more stable home for her, and I wasn't fit to be a mom. And so I took her to him, and it broke my heart, and that was absolutely the right decision, because if I would have tried to keep her where I ended up going, that would have been a way more destructive situation. And that would have not been fair to my daughter, and she didn't deserve that. And so I am proud of myself, actually, that I dropped her off with her father, who was more fit, and I didn't expose her to what I went through. So this might be a love letter to the mothers who feel guilty, and for the mothers that feel like they're not doing enough. And a love letter to the mothers who were made mothers when they were kids, and to the mothers that didn't feel like they had support, and to the mothers that life shits on them and they don't know what to do, and they're overwhelmed and they're overworked, and to the mothers who are in situations that aren't safe, but they do their best to protect their kids. And to the mothers who are suffering right now, because there's mothers all over the world who suffer and who feel guilt for not being able to provide for their kids. And this is for parents in general. Parents that have good hearts and good intentions, and yet the world that we live in does not support you. And so maybe this is a love letter to you. And maybe this is some hope and a redemption story for what could happen and what could come later down the line for you, and to not lose faith and trust that God is walking with you every single moment, even when you feel like God's not there and God's abandoned you because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And this is my proclamation, that God walks with you even when you think you don't deserve God's love. There were many, many nights where I felt like God had abandoned me because I had abandoned myself and abandoned my kid. But here's the truth, okay? Everything played out exactly how it was supposed to play out. And forgiveness is a real thing. And God has forgiven you already. Okay? Luke 17:21. The kingdom of heaven is within. okay? God never leaves you because God is inside of you. God is in your heart. God walks with you every single step of the way, even when you lose hope, even when you don't trust yourself, even when you're in the depths of hell. God is actually right there because God is through you, with you, in you. So I dropped my daughter off and I ended up meeting someone who I thought was a safe person to stay with. And it turns out that this was not a safe person. And what ended up happening next, I don't think anyone around me really truly understood or knew or thought would ever happen to me. And this is really hard for me to talk about, but I think that it's important because I want women and young girls to know that this world is not safe. And that if you are naive and you think that the world out there will just be easy for you to figure out and navigate, and you turn away from your loved ones and you turn away from your family and you turn away from the community that has always held you because of fear and arrogance and pride and just being afraid to be fully seen and loved for who you really are at your core, and you're running away from that, and you think that you're going to go run and be free out in the world, well, you have another thing coming, because this world is not a safe place for women. And so this is also a warning for young girls listening, and also parents, to create safety for your daughters. Create safety for your kids. Create safety in the family. Create safety in the house. Because if they're out there seeking love and attention and safety and affection, and they're seeking everything outside of the home, when you could have provided it, okay? So I'm speaking to parents as well. Is it really worth an argument over the dishes? Is it really worth an argument over your kid sneaking out one night? Is it really worth it to have certain rules or restrictions with your kids? Is it really worth it? Because my story is a horror story. It's a story of walking into a house that was not safe. And so I'm going to bring attention to an issue that is really prevalent in the United States and around the world, but definitely in the United States. And it's that this country is built off this country is built on the exploitation of children and their bodies. I really did not think that I would be the 19-year-old girl getting sex trafficked across the state and have it cross over into other states. Okay, the I-5 corridor is one of the most used interstates for sex trafficking and drug trafficking. Okay. This is what is beneath the shadow of our country. This is what's beneath the surface. It is the exploitation of young people and their bodies for people's own selfish wants and needs. And it's really, really disgusting. And so although I don't come from a place of victimhood when I speak about this, I actually come from a very empowered place, as I know that I went through everything that I went through so that I could speak about what healthy sexuality looks like and what true sexual transmutation and working with sexual energy and how when we actually work with it in a way for creativity and to have energy and to bring presence and aliveness and into our health and into our daily life in a way that is from a place of deep love, that this is what shifts paradigms, and this is what changes the world. Okay, so you want to make the world a safer place? Clean up your own sexual energy. Clean up your own sexual energy. So, yes, I was 19 and I ended up thinking that I was going to be free and figure myself out, and I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, and it was so easy. I was such an easy target, such easy prey, so naive, thinking I knew everything and thinking I knew better, to end up trapped and in captivity and brainwashed and abused and used and horribly mistreated, and then addicted to substances. And further disassociating from my body, from the feminine, from my baby, from my family, from my community. And this is what that does. That's what happens when you are in pursuit of conquering something, to achieve something, to get something. And this isn't a victim story. I really want to be really clear. This is a warning to parents, but also people who aren't parents, This is a really important subject around teaching our youth about the truth of the country and what it actually runs on, okay? Sex sells, and it always has. And I'm actually going to call some attention to the spiritual community in this way of, hypersexualizing spirituality and hypersexualizing our bodies and putting it on the internet, and you're in a cute yoga outfit and you're doing yoga in front of the camera and it's just a picture of your butt. And it's like, okay, it's one thing to... and I think we can use our discernment and tell the difference between, priestesses that are actually doing this work and are actually showing up in their authenticity and are actually showing up in a way where we're empowering each other. And then there's those who are still feeding the machine that the country's built on, which is just exploitation of the feminine and exploitation and mining and a raping of earth, and how the womb is a resource, and it's a resource for life. And, what's siphoning you, my love, is not the guy down the street. It is the system that is built on it. This country is built on the siphoning of the feminine energy. The feminine energy is your creative energy. It's your life force. And yes, it is your sexual energy. And so when you have been through what I've been through, which is seeing it very up close and personal, what it looks like to, be seen as a resource and not respected, and to be taken from over and over and over again, and to feel that emptiness and that void and that death feeling over and over again, is an experience that you never quite get over because it's still happening. So even though I am many years out from that situation, which only lasted a few months, it was only a few months of my life, but it had lasting effects. And it's taken me years to heal from that experience and to even be able to have a healthy relationship to the masculine. And this is why a lot of my work is about union, is because for a very long time I was in my wounded feminine energy because of my experience where I just did not trust men, and I was very jaded and very bitter and emotionally volatile towards men, and I was disgusted by them. I'm sure that's pretty understandable, and any man who can't understand that is just blind to their own stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty good reason to be disgusted And so I had to move through all of that. And to forgive myself and forgive others, and just a lot of forgiveness, a lot of Mary Magdalene once again. But this essentially ended up leading me towards union because, and guys, union is divine masculine, divine feminine within you, and you marry those two energies within yourself. And so yeah, after the few months of being in captivity, I was finally freed and with my life, thank goodness. And I was having a hard time going back to normal society after that, and I was still deep in my drug problem. So I ended up dancing at a club in Portland, and I was a stripper for a year. And that's when I started to pull myself out of the depths of hell, and I started to dedicate more time to healing. But one of the things that gifted me from the strip club actually was a lot of spiritual gifts. A lot of my spiritual gifts were actually very useful in the strip club. A lot of magnetism gifting, a lot of like knowing who I am, loving myself. You have to kind of get over like jealousy, lack, scarcity stuff when you work in a strip club. You have to move through a lot of body issues. You have to love your body. You have to accept your body. You have to stand in your power. You cannot get on a stage naked if you are not confident in who you are, and you can, like, that's not even a thing. Like, dancers are extremely powerful women who hold a lot of sacral, beautiful sacral energy. Is the business exploitative? Of course. Is there a lot of darkness that I would not wish on anyone? Yes. Is it disgusting? Yes, it's really bad. I would not want my daughter to end up doing that. But if she wanted to know how to express her sacral energy in a healthy way, I fortunately have the tools to help her do that without her having to exploit herself. So you see how all of this has really led me to this place of feminine empowerment, because I worked with women deeply in a very intimate setting, but it also, there were so many things that were disempowering and that I had to face about that business. And, how it's just sad that we used to honor the goddess, and that that business is like it's honoring the goddess, but it's all a facade. It's not a real way to honor the goddess, because it's still exploitative and it's not by choice. A lot of those women have to do that, or they feel like they have to do that to get by. And there's just a lot of things. Maybe I'll do a full episode just on the sex work industry. Maybe if you listen to the pod and you have specific questions, if you want to email me, the links in all of my bios, you guys, Instagram and YouTube. If you want to email me questions, then I would love to answer them in a podcast. That would be kind of fun. If you want to ask me questions about being an ex-sex worker and what that did for me and, my experience, then I could do an episode on that. I would be open to that. But moving along, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just think that it's really important to bring awareness to the more shadowy aspects of our sacral energy and how it can be siphoned and exploited and used for harm, and for women to be turned against themselves, their own wombs, and each other, and how it's really not good for the masculine to engage in those spaces. Because it's a mirror for how it's not good for their sacral energy either. It's just not a productive use of our sacral energy. And it keeps us trapped in systems that are oppressive. So I just went on quite a tangent, and I don't know if people are going to unfollow me or they're going to have, strong opinions about that. Like I said, this is a safe space to be triggered, and I will meet those triggers with love and compassion. And if you wanted to talk, we can talk. And if you have similar stories and you want to come on the pod, I welcome that. You can email me your story. I can read it anonymously. I'm also going to be doing that, as I've already received a couple of stories that were sent anonymously, and so I'll be reading those for them because they don't want to come on. So if that's something that you want to do, I'll be doing that. But yeah, these are important conversations to be had, and I'm open to discussing them with other people who have either had similar situations or they just have questions and they want to dive deeper into those topics. This is a space to just talk, really, to verbally, move through these ideas and these issues that we have as a society in a safe space. So, yes. I was awakening to a lot of my feminine power and feminine magnetism in the club, but even that needed to come to an end, as that environment was still not healthy for me. And then I get into the story of yoga. This is where I also found yoga and the power of my body. Because when you're a dancer, you are in a somatic space. And so I actually recommend women do go to pole dancing classes. I think they're super good for you. I think they're really healthy for us. I think we were always meant to dance. I think we were always meant to get into our hips. Many other cultures that are not super Puritan do this. They get into their hips and move their bodies, and they use dance as an offering to the goddess. And so there's nothing wrong with dancing. That dancing was the best thing that came out of all of that came out of the sex work industry, was dancing. And dancing saved my life, and music saved my life, and learning to love my body saved my life, and learning how to value myself saved my life. These things weren't all bad. There were good lessons in that club that I learned, and I worked in many clubs, but just that industry, there were many good things that came from it. But I really just took all the good and I left the rest. And I suggest everyone do that with everything in life. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Take what works for you and leave the rest. Keep it pushing. We don't need to dwell on what doesn't work. What doesn't work, but what works. So embrace that, keep going with that. And so I took all that knowledge and that wisdom from that space, and I kept it pushing. And I decided, I wanted to be more involved in my daughter's life. At that point, she, so it was about a year total, you guys, a year that I was not a very good mom. And also there are other aspects of that I will leave out, because me and her father have gotten to a place where we are very much cordial and we are okay and we are very integrated, and so I don't want to disrupt that. We have forgiven each other for the past. We're going to leave it in the past. But this is a sign that it does get better, and this is a sign that you can move through and get through anything, even the darkest of times, even the rainiest of days. So around this time, I am about 21, and I leave the sex work industry for good, and I decide I want to go back to school, and I decide I'm going to, start to heal this relationship with my daughter and heal the relationship with my own body. And I was getting into yoga and I was healing and, all the stuff, right? So I started to awaken to just my aliveness, my life force, and the feminine and masculine energies within me. And I started to study a lot of Hindu and tantric and yogic spaces. I started to get into like Buddhism, and I was reading a lot of spiritual books, and I was buying tarot cards and crystals, and I was doing all the woo-woo stuff, and I started my healing journey. So I really like to say that I started really taking my healing seriously when I was 21. But it wasn't until leaving a long-term relationship at 25. Yeah, 24, 25, I left a 4-year relationship with the older gentleman that ran one of the clubs, and I'm going to leave his name private, and I'm going to leave that story for another time if I ever tell it at all. But that situation was definitely in a power imbalance and an unhealthy codependent situation where there was a lot of alcohol and drugs involved. And so when I started healing myself, that relationship eventually broke down because I quit drinking and doing the drugs, and I quit the codependent behaviors, which naturally evolved me out of that relationship. So I would say that once I got sober, which I'm coming up on my sober date, which is December 15th, 2025 of this year, I will be 3 years sober from alcohol. It really was, 2023 when I got sober that my spiritual gifts came online and were stronger than they've ever been in my entire life. And I basically woke up to the fact that I am a very potent channeler, and my connection to the earth and to the feminine energy is way stronger than I ever thought or could even have dreamt up or imagined. And it really, really started to sink deeply into my bones that we are not meant to just go through life disassociated, and we are not meant to go through life always constantly just distracted, and we're not meant to go through life hating our bodies, and we're not meant to go through life worrying so much about what we fucking look like. And so much of awakening to the feminine is just awakening to the pure essence of who you are, and remembering your soul, and remembering your core, your roots, your tree, the fact that you come from her, and that your body is a temple. Not just your spirit, not just your ability to meditate in stillness, not just your ability to pray, not just your ability to dream, but your ability to move, your ability to feel, your ability to get your feet dirty, your ability to be the elements, really be the elements, which led me to astrology. The elements led me to astrology: water, fire, earth, and air, and the goddess asteroids, and the stars. And the deeper I connected into my body, the deeper I connected into these elements, and the deeper I connected to the stars and the planets, because they are all just natural. It's all just natural. So the earth is natural. It's just so organic, right? Our food, our bodies, the ground, the resources, the wood that we make our houses out of, everything is just organic, like matter. Like, I started to awaken to how the physical reality is super sacred, and that my spirituality and my physical reality didn't need to be so separate. It wasn't something that I needed to hide away or, be ashamed of. It was just like this integration of what needed to be integrated. Everything needed to be integrated. It was like a sandwich. I needed to start to put all these different pieces of myself back together. Oh boy, this is long, you guys. If you've listened this far to me ramble, and I don't know if I even want to edit this, and I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry because I'm done apologizing for just being. I'm existing. I'm just existing. I'm just being seen right now fully by whoever's gotten this far in the pod. And yeah, this is like my journey, like as a woman. I didn't even really talk about giving birth and like what an awakening that is. And I was so young. I was a kid giving birth, and the maturing process of watching my daughter grow up and really just always constantly being humbled over and over and over by my child, by the women in my life who are wisdom keepers. I've been so lucky that the women in my life are so wise and so strong and so fucking brilliant and beautiful and magical, and just the strength that they admit. Like, I really am lucky that I have been surrounded by beautiful feminine energies. And that is a blessing. And it all started with my grandma and her embodiment of Mary Magdalene. She would forgive you every time. It didn't matter what you did. Her heart was so big. And it's like, I come from her. I come from my grandmother. I come from her. And so she is within me, and Mary is within me. And so I have the capacity to keep my heart open and to forgive and to move through the energy and to have compassion for myself and others. And so, yes, I've just been surrounded by beautiful, feminine, wise women, wild women too. Not just wise women with big hearts, but also the wilder, the old crones. I've been surrounded by very beautiful women. And so I just want to take this moment to just have a lot of gratitude, because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. And this is why we have to continue to respect the elders and to hold space for them as they witness themselves again. We are just mirrors. We're all just mirrors in this game of life. And so, yeah, hold space for each other, you guys. Love each other. Death is inevitable and we never know when it will be. So love each other deeply. Okay, y'all. I want to keep this at an hour. And I just want to say thank you. And just let me know. Just let me know anything. I'm open to, comments on the stuff. YouTube, ring the bell, subscribe, all this stuff. And yeah, I think I will try and release an episode once a week, but maybe once every 2 weeks. I just don't know. It just depends. I should have the next episode out in a week. Let's do Wednesday. But if not, we'll just do once every 2 weeks. I'll figure out a schedule. I just want to get into the flow of it and see what exactly all comes through my channels. And what I mean by that is my email and my DMs, and seeing, who wants to get on here and share space. Yeah, this has really just been an episode of me kind of introducing myself and what I do. I've just worked really intimately with some of the shadowy aspects of the sacral and root chakra, and to learn how to balance out, those higher and lower chakras, and the light and the dark, and duality and polarity, and all of these things, while still honoring my humanity. And that I'm just a messy human, and I'm still learning, and I'm always a student of life, and I'm very curious about what's going to come next in my life and on my journey. I am always really inspired by those who take risks, and I'm always very inspired by those who kind of go against the grain and go against the norm. And I'm always very inspired by those who choose love over fear and who preach love over fear. And I'm in love with life. And I'm in love with the dance that happens between witnessing and being witnessed and felt and seen, and the intimacy and the depth of those two things. And so with that, I leave you, and I love you, and I see you, and I hear you, and I can't wait to meet again. All right, bye guys.